All right, in this explainer, we're basically becoming cosmic detectives. We're opening up a case file on one of the biggest mysteries out there, the nature of reality itself. We're going to piece together the clues to figure out the very fabric of our universe.
And this is the central question, the one that kicks off the entire investigation. I mean, just think about it for a second. Our universe, with these specific laws of physics, this particular history, with Earth and us on it, it could have been different in an infinite number of ways. So why this version? What makes this one the actual one?
To even start tackling that question, first we've got to wrap our heads around this idea of a whole universe of possibilities. Our reality, it feels so solid, right? So inevitable. But really, it's just one possible version out of countless others that could have existed instead.
We use that word actual all the time. This is the actual situation. But what are we really saying? What property is that word even pointing to? It seems so obvious, but the moment you try to pin it down, you realize defining actuality is one of the thorniest problems in philosophy.
Okay, so every good detective starts with the basic clues, right? So to solve the mystery of actuality, we need to look at the most fundamental pieces of evidence that our own experience gives us. And here's our first big clue, the appearance-reality gap. We've all been there. You think you see a friend across the street, but it's a stranger. A dream feels completely real until you wake up. This simple fact that we can be wrong forces us to draw a line between how things seem and how they actually are.
And that gap really splits our investigation into two key lines of inquiry. First, the conceptual question, let's call it Q1, what even is actuality? What special sauce does it have? And then the explanatory question, Q2, why did this world get the promotion to actual out of all the other possibilities? They're connected for sure, but as we're about to see, one is way harder to answer than the other.
So, to help us crack this case, we're bringing in an expert witness. But it's not a human. We're going to see how the AI model Gemini tries to solve this very mystery. Let's see what it has to say.
Gemini's first point is something called determinacy. The idea here is that our actual world is filled in, down to the last quantum particle, in excruciating detail. Possible worlds? They're more like vague templates. The idea of a tree versus that specific oak tree outside your window with exactly 3,452 leaves on it right now.
Okay, Gemini's second criterion is causal efficacy, and this one is a real game changer. It argues that only things in the actual world have the power to make stuff happen. The possibility of a hammer can't drive a nail into a piece of wood, only an actual physical hammer can. Actuality, in other words, has clout, it has power.
And the final piece of Gemini's theory is exclusivity. Think of it like a cosmic championship. The fact that this world is actual means that all the other versions, the one where you had cereal for breakfast instead of toast, or the one where Rome never fell, are automatically disqualified. Actuality is a winner-take-all game. And this is where Gemini drops the bombshell. It argues that any attempt to answer our big question, why this world, inevitably falls into a logical trap, a trilemma. Any explanation you try to give will lead to one of three dead ends. Either it's circular, like saying the world is actual because it's the one that exists, or you fall into an infinite regress where every explanation just needs another explanation, forever and ever. Or you just give up and say it's a brute fact. It is the way it is, just because. And that's no explanation at all.
But, a good detective never takes testimony at face value, not even from a super smart AI. Now it's time for the cross-examination. We have to poke around and see if there are any hidden assumptions buried in Gemini's perfect logic. Let's start with a really big one. Gemini said that having causal power is a key part of being actual. But wait a minute, is that something it discovered about reality, or did it just build that idea into its definition from the very beginning? It's a classic chicken or the egg situation.
And that right there is the key. By making causality a defining feature of actuality, Gemini isn't just analyzing a reality neutrally. It's smuggling in a huge philosophical assumption right from the start. That's not just an observation, it's a very specific and debatable theory about how the universe fundamentally works.
This brings us to the second hidden assumption. That whole inescapable trilemma, it really leans on this old philosophical rule called the principle of sufficient reason. And all that really means is the idea that everything must have a reason or a cause for why it is. But what if that rule is just too strict? What if it's not actually true?
When you get right down to it, Gemini's trap only works if you agree to play by its incredibly demanding rules.
But if we just relax that principle a little bit, if we allow for the possibility that maybe, just maybe, some things don't need a deeper why, then the whole trilemma might just dissolve. Maybe the problem isn't reality. Maybe it's the tool we're using to measure it.
This table really helps clarify what the AI's purely structural view leaves out. You see, on one side, Gemini's view is superlinear, like a chain. A causes B, which causes C. But alternative views see it more like a web, where everything mutually depends on everything else. Gemini focuses on abstract possibilities, but it misses things like perspective, experience, and the simple, undeniable feeling of the now. You could say the AI understands the blueprint of the house, but it has no idea what it feels like to live inside it.
So, after all of this, where does our investigation leave us? It's time to close the case file, deliver the final verdict, and synthesize what we've learned about the very limits of explanation itself.
And here's the verdict. We've actually made some real progress on that first question. We can talk about what actuality is, using these ideas of determinacy and causal power. But that second, much deeper question, why this world is the one that's actual, that's where we seem to hit a fundamental wall.
This quote from Carrie Draper, the author of the paper we're looking at, just sums it up perfectly. Actuality is both intelligible, we can grasp it, define it, and mysterious. We can say what it is, but we can't fully say why it is. It's this beautiful, profound tension.
So we shouldn't think of Gemini's trilemma as some kind of failure or a dead end. A better way to see it is as a map. It's not a map to a treasure chest, but it's a map that shows you exactly where the edge of the known world is. It charts the absolute boundary of what our tools of logic and explanation are capable of.
And that leaves us with one final huge question to ponder. This deep mystery of why this world, is that a feature of the universe itself? Or is it maybe just a reflection of the limits of our own minds, a limit of the very idea of explanation that we use to try and make sense of it all? The case might be unsolvable, not because reality is illogical, but because our logic simply has a horizon it can't see beyond.